Thanks very much, Alan. In a way, you can see the beards are getting white of some of us. We've been in this for quite a while. And of course, Alan can't mention everybody who was involved in this, but the two particular people who were important to me right in the beginning. And one of them was Baba Robert Maziboko. Maziboko worked in Maritzburg, and he had the Africa Tree Center, and he was one of the early guys in the 60s already who was working with organic agriculture at the Valley Trust and before that. And he taught me a lot about participatory development approach and how to work with people. So wonderful, another of our pioneers. And the other one who, when I joined 68, I started my first organic garden. And 69, I joined the organic sector, the Soil Association of South Africa. And the great person there was Pauline Raffaelli and these people, but the great person who was out in Soweto was Mari Roo. We used to call her Granny Noah. And Mari Roo started the GROW program. Don't feed your dustbin, feed your soil. And Mari was one of the people who got me passionate in those days about organic agriculture. So organic's been around for quite a while, and oh sorry, this is the wrong one. I hope that I've got two presentations, so okay. So globally, we want to just have a little bit of a look at what context we are in as far as this is concerned. And if you look at the global context of how organics has grown, even from 99, there was about 10 million hectares, and it's been a steady growth over the last 20 years. We're now sitting about 60 million hectares internationally of certified organic land. And this is a rather complex diagram, but here's the world, and you can see the hectares are big in Australia, but that's mainly open area, which is just stations that grow sheep basically, and but not so much intensive agriculture, whereas South America, North America, Europe, there's a lot of actual intensive organic. But Africa, we're a little bit lagging behind in terms of the hectares, although when you look at the numbers of people, the number of producers, top three countries, India, Uganda, and Mexico. So Uganda has been one of the big success stories, and 200,000 certified farmers there, about 1.2 million organic farmers who are not certified. So around the world, there's a lot happening, and Africa's a lot happening. We've got Jordan Gamo who's going to speak to us in a moment, who's the chairman of AfroNet, representing organics in Africa. We also have the National Organic Agricultural Research Association of Africa, which I'm involved in, which looks at the research side of organics. And we have the international IFOAM, the Organics International, which is also very much a representative body. But as Gordon was saying before, we in Africa are trying to build things at local level as much as we can. So the organic business has really grown. The millions of hectares in Australia are by far the biggest, but the actual market in the States, there's nearly $40 billion US of organic trade, which is a lot, which is about half of the total 80 billion organic trade. So the States have got their reputation of being good consumers, and they're doing a lot of consuming of organic agriculture. But so it is a growing thing, and you saw that first diagram. It has been steady. When I went to Germany, I was sent by the Institute of Natural Resources, which I used to work for, to look at training in organics. And I went to Germany and England, and Germany was training organic farmers and doing an apprenticeship. But the guy that I went to see who was in charge of training for the German government in agriculture said, organics, it's a niche thing, it'll never grow more than 10%. And I had a similar discussion with another guy from the German government 10 years later. He said, organics, it's a niche market, it'll never grow more than 20%. And you will see it's now getting towards 30, and it won't be long before it's 50. So organics is becoming mainstream, and there's a lot happening internationally. Every 3 years, IFOAM has its International World Congress, and a few people in the room were there in Delhi. Poor old Andre Liu has still got bronchial pneumonia from the terrible air. It was so polluted in Delhi. The first 4 days, it was severe pollution, and then it was hazardous, and the next 4 days they closed the school. Why? Because farmers in the north were burning their crop residues, and that on top of the dust and the construction and the factories. I got to the point, I left 2 days early and I went up to the mountains in Ladakh in northern India because my lungs just couldn't handle it. And it was terrible, but it was a wonderful conference. And Smoggy New Delhi, a great event. We had a day on organic food systems that I was very much involved with Carola Strassner and Johannes Karl. We had an animal pre-conference that a couple of people here were also at, where I spoke, and then the whole of the Sikkim province in the north of India has gone organic, and that was really exciting to see. There's also Gusan province in South Korea has gone organic, and the whole of Bhutan is going organic. So there's a lot of countries that are beginning to say, we must do organics, and it has to do with food sovereignty, it has to do with us being allowed to express our culture, to grow the food that we love, and to process it in the way we want, not to be dictated to by McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken. So it is quite an exciting event to go to an organic conference, and as I say, the Organic Food Systems Program was very active there. It's part of the Sustainable Food Systems Program of the United Nations. They have 6 core activities, and ours is one of them. So United Nations is recognizing that organic food systems is an important part of transforming world food systems. World food systems are broken. You've got more and more diabetes, you've got more and more obesity, you've got more and more heart disease because of processed industrial food that has been grown in a way which is not appropriate. We won't go there, but the nice thing is that Carola Strassner is one of the people who got this going, is a Cape Town girl. She's now a professor at Münster University, and she's really built this with Johannes and Jostein. There are now 87 partners from 34 countries, and they are looking at a food systems approach. So not just about the way we produce our food, how do we process it, how do we choose wise food choices instead of choosing rubbish, and how do we actually prepare that food without destroying it. So it's a much broader range. So I want to now move briefly to South Africa. So we've seen the global picture. If we look at what happened to agriculture in South Africa, productivity, we had a period of about 60 years of gradually declining productivity. The farmers were almost all white. They were supporters of apartheid government. Apartheid government gave subsidies so that the farmers would vote for the nationalists. And what happened is more and more control boards, no competition, efficiency declined. Then around about the 60s, they started pulling the plug and saying, we've got to stop these control boards, farmers have to stand on their own 2 feet. Productivity went up dramatically. Then along comes new democratic government, and the farmers get severe wobblies and very worried about things. Boom, down it comes. And then 1994, actually democracy not so bad. All of a sudden we can sell our produce overseas. We're not the smelly dogs of the world anymore, so our productivity goes up again. A lot of the farmers who are propped up by white government go out of business and sell, and we get some quite efficient farmers doing quite a good job of productivity. But look here, 1990, 60,000 commercial farmers, and only about 13,000 of them were producing 80% of the gross agricultural product of South Africa. So at that point you had about 13,000 good farmers who were economically good. By 2000 already dropped, we lost 20,000, but there we lost 20,000 pretty poor farmers who were propped up by government policies. 2010 we're down to 23,000 commercial farmers. And of those, 10,000 are producing 80% of the gross agricultural product, and 300 are producing 40%. So half of those, so 300 mega farms that we have, which are producing almost half of the gross agricultural product in the country. Very scary. Very important, those big farms, but they're, most of them very chemical, but becoming more biological. But the fact that you've got 300 farmers producing nearly half the food is very, very scary. But of course you've got a couple of million smallholder farmers who are producing a lot of food as well, but not in the formal market. So we have to think about that commercial farmers are actually national treasures. They may not be very good for the environment, but they employ a lot of people and they feed a lot of people. And to be a commercial farmer in today's environment is not easy. How has agriculture changed? 100 years ago, we had more than half of South African agriculture was livestock, and most of the rest was field crops. Now we found less livestock, less field crops, and much more horticulture. So the horticulture has intensified from 10% to 24%. And this intensification of agriculture has been responsible for a lot of the growth of agriculture. So we actually have a sector within South Africa that is where in George where I am, lots of berry farmers, lots of macadamia nuts, around Joburg, lots of intensive veggies. We export all kinds of exotic berries and things like that. So agriculture has changed a lot. And when we look at SAOSO being part of, sorry, spelling mistake, part of African Organic Network, Gordon's going to tell us more about that in a moment. But in 2012, we had the Sustainable Organic Agriculture Action Network, and my Raymond Auerbach Foundation at the time was part of setting that up. And we had the meeting in Bonn, Sustainability Days, where we looked at how do we, so everyone's claiming to be sustainable, organics is losing the idea that it's the sustainable idea, and as Alan said, agroorganics coming in, and a lot of people saying organic is elitist, but we did start developing Organic 3.0. Organic 1 was pioneers, people like me and Alan who were kind of hippies going back to the land in the 60s and 70s and saying there must be a different way to farm, and a lot of African people saying we've been doing this for hundreds of years, by the way, and the beginning of the coming together of those two things. Then Organics 2 was all about certification and science and what are our quality standards, and got to a point 10 years ago where the certification tail was wagging the organic dog, and we said, hey, certification should just be a tool for getting the food out there, for guaranteeing quality. So we developed Organic 3.0, where we said we're now talking about mainstreaming organics in the world. And so AfroNet was formed, and the IFOAM Southern Africa Network was formed, but hadn't ever really got going. And the Network of Organic Agricultural Research in Africa got going. And when you then look at SAOSO, we had a history, Soil Association of South Africa, Organic South Africa, Organic Agricultural Association of South Africa over the past 40 years, and then SAOSO coming out of that, hopefully a bit more successful than the other four. And then we have developed the South African Participatory Guarantee System Association, representing the member farmers and PGS groups. We'll talk more about that a little later. A way of helping people not to go through this formal certification, which is so expensive, but to get into the high-end market through contact with the people who are actually eating the food. So, and the standards, as Alan said, we finally now, after 15 years of struggle, have got standards which are on the SAOSO website, and hallelujah, well done those people who've been working for all this time. Really as Alan said, there's the OSIC and the SAOSO, and OSIC is supposed to work with the National Organic Commission, which never really got established. This was one of the early SAOSO things from about 10 years ago, I think. And the idea was that DTI, DAF, and other departments would feed into an organic commission. SAOSO would feed in from the farmers, but not the input suppliers. And we've got a number of input suppliers here, the organic producers and their organizations, manufacturers and trade. So the South African organic sector, not just the farmers, and again, getting towards a food system approach. That is what we still have to help to happen, but it never really started and never really worked like that. So just a few things then about what I've been doing. We started comparative trials between organic and conventional systems, and a book, I'm busy writing a book, has to be finished in June when I go overseas and present a paper about it, and it's looking at essentially the organic food systems and how can we meet the needs of Southern Africa. And that will be published by the Commonwealth Agricultural Bureau International. So we set up the trials, which have run for 4 years. I've had about 5 different master's students. We've looked at the yields, and we managed to close the yield gap by getting the soil right. We had to put rock phosphate in to make to close the gap between organic and conventional, and the big problem was the phosphate. So this has got nothing, this is organic, these over here are conventional, and then rotation with cowpeas and sweet potatoes against monoculture, organic or monoculture conventional. So the trials have been very useful. We've got data, we've got soil analysis, how did the soil change, it got sweeter, we had to put the phosphate, then we closed the gap. The organic matter went up, then it held the water better. I've got a master's student looking at water use efficiency, and she's busy pulling that together now. The water use efficiency of organics was better as the organic matter went up, holds the water better, and also the pH, the soil gets more sweet, and already potassium is becoming available, but phosphate not yet becoming available. You have to go up above pH 6 to get that available. We're only up to 5.4 on the organic plots. So a lot of interesting research stuff. But the key thing was that we have to answer, if we want to help Africa to feed Africa, how do African smallholders enter the value chain with confidence? And Ipopa in Uganda was a project, and also in Zambia, that helped Ugandan smallholders to access markets, been enormously successful. That's why so many farmers in Uganda, and quality management systems, organic third-party certification, and PGS, so that they could access the niche quality market and they could export. And then Siavuna did the same in KwaZulu-Natal, and is Mteto here yet? Hey, good to see you, man, welcome. So Mteto, Wim Troost has got that going, and Mteto has been helping them, and they now have other people. But that was a group of farmers in southern KwaZulu-Natal. Because they got help with the marketing, their production went up and up and up, and they were helped with it. And I think most of us as farmers, we're good at producing, but we're not necessarily any good at marketing. And that's been one of the key things. The Afrikaner farmers did the same with the Kooperasie. They got going after the will of Tenny Engelser. There was this business of you have to somehow do your marketing. You have to bring in marketing people, otherwise you don't make it. And very often farmers don't have those skills. So we've done a lot of research. Wim did his master's there and under my supervision, and he said there are 5 problems: transport and distance to market, product quality, product quantity, relationship, the power relationship between seller and buyer, and the barriers to market entry, because I don't know as a small-scale farmer what's going on. And across Africa, even also South America, Southeast Asia, the same 5 problems that smallholder farmers have. So if you remove the risks of marketing, you help risk-averse producer to produce. Wim managed to stimulate production by being there every Thursday to buy everything that those farmers could produce. And that developed over the years. And I think it's important lessons. So Wim then said, we've got this complicated supply chain. Conventionally, I won't go through it, I'm going to stop here. But if we can't shorten that supply chain, we're in a lot of trouble. And the trouble that we have has to do with the fact that each of these people takes their percentage. In America, the consumer dollar, the average farmer sees 7 cents of the consumer dollar. In America, the organic value chain is shorter, and the farmer sees 40 cents out of every dollar, which is a lot better. Siavuna, they say 60 cents out of the dollar will go to the farmer, out of the rand. So that's what I wanted to say here. I just very quickly want to show a process that Rob Small and I have worked out, where we're saying basically that to move from subsistence farming to subsistence farming takes usually about 3 years. It's not rocket science, but you have to actually learn how to produce if you are a subsistence farmer, unless you learned it from your grandmother, in which case you already know. And to move from subsistence to semi-commercial is another 3 years or so of learning something about the market. And usually then when you learn something about the market, you say, well, I'll go into a different market and I will make money in a less risky way than agriculture. So of 10,000 farmers that might start here, you might have 1,000 who get there. That's not rocket science, but it takes some skills. And then you might have 100 who get there, and of those 100, you might have 1 or 2 who become full-on commercial farmers. Because the complexity of the market is that you start here with your own, feeding your own family. Then you start on farm talking about selling to specialist shops. And then you want to go and sell to the supermarket. Boy, from here to there, it's a huge jump to be able to have a big truckload going 3 times a week. Small-scale farmers really battle to fill those trucks. And then you want to export, and government thinks we can jump from here to here. We can't. We have to go through a learning process to actually learn about marketing, to learn about professional production. So that's all I wanted to say. For me, in fact, the other grand old man of organics is Rob Small, Abalimi Bezekaya in Cape Town. And Rob and I, when I was doing my master's and he was getting things going with Abalimi, we sort of cooked up. This is sort of came out of my master's, and he said, he came up with this diagram saying, but yeah, this is what it is. It actually, he had slightly different terms, but you have to get them through each of those phases. And lots of people are doing this, and lots of people are trying to get there, but very few people are doing this difficult link. And this is where PGS and SAOSO, I think we stand here saying, how do we help people to get into the market? That's the difficult point where we sit at the moment. So I just want to say, leave you at that. Thank you very much. I hope that's given a bit of an overview